about how to UV this same model we've been working at, but this time we're going to assume we're adding normal maps to it. Normal maps really are the hot topic right now, and knowing how to do normal maps is probably going to be necessary if you go into video games. So we made this little add-on video to do the normal maps. Now, there's some different things you've got to do with normal maps. You can't UV the model the same way we did if we're not using normal maps. The difference being those axes of how those UVs are laid out are going to make a big difference if you add normal maps. It doesn't make a big difference if you're not doing normal maps, but it will if you're doing normal maps. Here's the model as it was when we left the last tutorial, and you can see that if I click on the model, it has an unwrap modifier on it. And here's the layout as we left it. What we've got here are large chunks of the body, like the neck. This is the torso, the head, the, what is this, front of one leg, back of one leg, the other leg. And we've got some other pieces here. This is the bottom of the hoofs. And we've basically mirrored these. We've flipped the corresponding other section of this on the other side of the animal, flipped it and placed it right over this one. Now you can do that with symmetry, which we did a little bit of, or you can do it manually. And this is the mirror keys, this one and this one. If we're going to normal map something, we cannot mirror it, or your normal maps will come in inside out, and in other words, one side will be correct and the other side will look like whatever was supposed to be raised out will be raised in, and you're going to end up with what you don't want. You're going to end up with one side that looks good and one side that looks bad. And that's because those axes got flipped when we mirrored this. So the z-axis is pointing the wrong direction on the normal. Here's what we ended up with after I unwrap UVW this particular animal. Let me go to the next file here. And I'm not going to do all this over the video because the process is exactly the same so far. I'm just walking you through where the change took place. And if I click on this guy, you can see unwrap UVW is the same. And here's what the pieces look like if I don't use mirror. And so you can see, if I go down here to select by element and polygon, I'll select this particular piece here. You can see this is, let's grab this one, easier to see. This is one part of the leg, but this piece here, which you can tell is the same piece, just flipped the other direction, is the other side of the leg. The top of the body, this time I didn't split this down the middle, and you can see it goes all the way across. And the pieces of the head here, if I grab one piece, that's one side, the other piece is the other side. You'll notice I didn't mirror these, so if I was to mirror them, I would do something like that, and then place them over the top of each other to save UV space. I didn't do that. We don't want to do that. In fact, you don't want to do it at all because it's really hard to even figure out which way to flip it if you do it and change your mind. So we'll have two pieces for anything that's cut down the side, and you can, if you want, go all the way across. The quick route here is just don't use mirror or flip after you pelt map it. You can do everything else the same, but you're going to end up with more pieces, is what it comes down to. Now, more pieces means your UV space is going to be a lot more crowded. And once all those pieces were put together, let me, don't want to save that. Let me open up this guy. And this is what our UV space ends up looking like once it's optimized. You can see, same thing. And here's what our space looks like now it's optimized. Now these pieces are taking up a much smaller area, so you may need to make a bigger texture map. This one's going to be 1024 by 1024, but in order to keep your resolution the same, you might need more texture space to do that. So we didn't do anything different. All we did was we did not use mirror, and we did not drag these pieces to share space with another similar piece and use mirror to kind of mirror them into position. You can use rotate, you can use move, you can use scale, and I believe you can use flip, but I did not flip these, and I've had trouble with the flip feature in the past, and I just didn't use it on these, but you really wouldn't need to. You can see this is nowhere near as optimized, but that's just a drawback to using normal maps. So now this guy can be normal mapped. Now I'll show you what the normal map looks like on this. It's already applied. It's over here. It's this one. And here's what my normal map looks like. That's a normal map. That purplish color gives them away. These different colors represent the different angles that the light is bouncing off the normals. And you can see that what we want to see are these colors a little bit opposite on similar pieces. So this is red, this is blue. And that's telling us that the normal is facing a different direction, and since these are on opposite sides of the animal, we'd expect to see that. Here's that great big piece that's on the back of the creature, and you can see that it's showing those muscle structures that I've created in it. Now I did that in a program called Mudbox, which you'll see in a minute, but you could use ZBrush, or you could model the detail in high polygon detail in Max or Maya or a 3D program and export the normal maps. But I really like using either ZBrush or Mudbox. And I'm going to cover Mudbox just because it's the newest of the two. And it's a little bit easier to use and probably easier to assume everyone will use that eventually. But here's what my goat looks like now. You can see he's got a lot of detail on him, but that detail does not exist in the mesh. Let me do a close-up here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Let's do a close-up of his head, since I spent some time there. Okay, here's a close-up of his head. You'll see there's a lot of detail in here, and none of that detail is going to be shown up in mesh. That's all normal map. The profile will stay the same, but I can add that detail into my model just simply by creating a normal map for it. So when you're creating a normal map, you need to make sure that the Pelt mapping or the unwrap UVW is all separate pieces, or if they're going to share space, you cannot use mirror on it. Also, when you render these out in Max, don't use directional lights. Try to use either Omni lights or spotlights, and they'll make your normal map look a little bit better too. Now, the next tutorial will cover how to do this over in Mudbox. It's a supplemental, so go ahead and look under the supplementals, and it will cover how to do this in Mudbox. And then we'll get back to the texturing, which is the next video in the series. But it gets a little confusing when you're dealing with normal maps because different layout procedures, it's just a different way of doing things, and you got to know which way you're going to do it at this point. Are you going to normal map it, or are you not going to use normal maps and just create texture where your details in the texture, not in the normal map? Okay, I added this piece just to show the difference between the two different layouts. This layout here is a normal, or is a layout, I shouldn't use the word normal, is a layout for a map that would not be using normal maps because these pieces are not only overlapping, the overlapping's okay, but they're mirrored. And in other words, their axes have been flipped from positive to negative. Does not make a difference if we're using just color, because the color is going to show through on both sides. But when we're dealing with light information, it makes a big difference. This piece over here is the unwrap UVW layout, been exported from Max, on a model that is ready for normal mapping. And you can see I have two of most of these pieces because I have to have double. I can't really mirror them and save space. You can overlap them, but it doesn't always help you. And so I've kept them separately, and then I'm going to export these out to another program and create the normal map. The normal map that I have on here, let me put back the the original one. The normal map was set to tangent space, and just a few seconds ago in the video you'll see that there were some seams. I've reapplied the normal map using object space, and now I get something that looks like this, which looks much better. And you can barely see the seams here. So the way to do that, there's two steps, and I'm going to jump over here to Mudbox really quick. And we'll cover the first step. Okay, and in Mudbox, I'm going to open up my goat here. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. All right. The setting that I did not really set correctly the last time. You would set all of these the same way that you did before. So it's the same way that I set them in the video. This one is the low res mesh. This one is the high res mesh. Your subdivision can go to highest. Set where you want to save the normal map here. Set your normal map size here. I usually set this somewhere around 20. And then under advanced settings, down below, instead of tangent space, set this to object space. Now when you render this, what you're going to get is a normal map that looks like, let me go access it from the material browser here. It's going to look like, let's go down here, here. It's going to look like these normal maps, and I'll show you the difference here. Here we go. I'm going to close this window. So you would hit render down here at this point, and it will kick out a different looking normal map. This is an object space normal map, and you can see it looks a little bit different than a tangent space normal map. Problem we're having with the tangent spaces is the seams don't actually line up perfectly with this type of pelt mapping. Some parts do. There's certainly some parts here that are done well, like this piece, but we're getting seams here around the legs, and you saw that when I rendered it. This is a tangent space, or this is an object spaced map, and you can see all your bumps are built into this. Now, this is what you would get if you rendered out those settings from Mudbox. And back in Max, I'm going to put that new object-based normal map here, normal bump, and it's going to slide right in here. Now, under my normal bump settings, I'm going to change it to local. By default, it's under tangent. So you'll change that to local. And what you'll end up with when we render this, let me make sure my skylight is turned off here because I don't want to take a long time to render this. You can turn the skylight off right there. It's usually on. I've turned it off. And if I hit render, you'll see that I end up with a much smoother normal map, and my detail doesn't have those seams here around the legs that I had before. The seams are actually there. If you zoom in, you can see the seams. Normal maps are notorious for having small seams. You can see them right there, about a pixel. There is a setting in Mudbox called seam bleed or edge bleed, and that would take care of that to some extent. And I did not set that, but that would take care of it. You can see another seam right there. So, but it's a lot less noticeable than the last time I rendered this here about 5 minutes ago. So we'll render our goat one more time, and that's our normal map setting. So render it as object space, and you can put your little goat there in object space. And for most needs, object space will work